traders, welcome to your daily market update for Thursday the 28th of May. And overnight we've seen the absence of much data coming out in the European session, so therefore Greece took centre stage as there was a lot of comments going back and forth as Tipras, the Greek PM, proclaimed that a deal with creditors was getting close. However, shortly after that fizzled out as EU members came out and said that they wish, quote unquote, and the market went on a little bit of a roller coaster ride on the back of that. You can tell by the price action that the euro is still being somewhat supported by his comments, and they are still clinging on to a deal happening. So for right now, the euro has held up quite well. We moved into the US session, and we didn't see a lot of great moves. The majority of the moves were happening during the euro session for the US dollar, and we did consolidate. We've seen bond yields just took a round trip and didn't really move too far. So we are now trading in the the Asian session, I should say, of Thursday the 28th, and we've just seen some very bad capital expenditure data from the Australian dollar, negative 4.4%. It was much worse than the market anticipated. As a result, the Australian dollar is being sold off across all currency pairs, and I expect that the falls in the momentum to continue as the Australian economy continues to underperform, and it's a theme that I have been beating the drum on for quite some time, and it doesn't look like we are close to the bottom yet after data like this. And I'm sure that with the further data coming out, we are going to continue to see the Australian dollar potentially break through the recent lows. And I'll get to that in the charts in a minute. But coming up today, we do have Fed member Williams coming out for a speech. His comments will be taken on board by the market, and everybody's looking for all the Fed members to comment and their interpretation of exactly how the Fed is looking to roll out the interest rate rise that they have suggested is going ahead. So people will be focused on his comments. We also have a fair bit of data coming out. We have trade balance coming out for the Swiss imports, exports. We have retail sales and gross domestic product out for Spain. We have likewise out for the pound. We have gross domestic product. We have total and business investment. We have consumer confidence coming out for Italy, of course, but really, the market will then move to the Eurozone data later on in the session and look for indications of any improving activity. If we get that, as well as the comments from the Greek PM and the market still hinting or hoping, clinging on to any hope of a deal being done this week, you will probably see the euro being a little bit supported. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and monitor the tone and price action as the session rolls out. Moving into the US session, we have initial jobless claims. That will affect the US data. We have a little bit of Canadian data, and we have pending home sales coming out. Last night's Canadian data, they kept interest rates on hold, and they said that if they see the US dollar continue to rise and oil be supported, well, then they'll probably be in a much better position. So that's why they left the interest rates on hold. So it was pretty much an unchanged sort of policy, and they're going to wait and see. Moving into later on in the session, we have the oil stock change, and that will affect oil prices, and oil prices have been volatile lately. They've been a little bit lower than the recent highs, and we'll see whether the stock change will create any turbulence there. If so, it will be reflected in the US dollar versus the Canadian dollar, and you might be able to pick up a trading opportunity. Let's get over to the US dollar index, and as you can see, it looks like it's somewhat stalled and flamed out here with an indecision candle. And I mentioned yesterday the potentials of it running out of momentum and having a bit of a stall, and it looks more likely that that could be the possible case after the daily candle pattern that we've received yesterday. So my timing was a little bit off, and we'll see whether we get a little bit of a pullback tonight after what has been a very healthy rally. The pullbacks will probably be initiated on the confidence from Greece coming up from a deal, and if that continues to flow through the European session and we see some positive data, well then we may see the US dollar come off a little bit. I don't expect this to be anything major in terms of a full-blown bearish trend forming, but simply a small correction, a healthy correction that the market potentially needs. Going over to the charts, we'll have a look at the New Zealand versus the US first, and as you can see, it's undergone a little bit of pressure. Yesterday, it was pretty much unchanged, as we've seen the market pull back a little bit in the US dollar in the US session, and other currency pairs were somewhat supported. So we were lower in the European session, but we did have a bit of a bounce, and right now, the New Zealand dollar is undergoing a little bit of pressure on the back of the Australian CAPEX data, pulling it down. and we are still looking at support at 72 cents, and a break of this could definitely open up to some lower levels. The Australian dollar could pull it through that and head lower. And as you can see, the Australian dollar was unchanged for the day, but as soon as we got that CAPEX data, the Australian dollar has been sold off heavily across the board, all currency pairs, the Australian dollar versus Japanese yen versus all other majors. So it's a widespread sell-off as the news just continues to get worse for Australia. Next major support is until 75.5 cents. So I think we're going to see the Australian dollar test that, but we'll wait and see how the US dollar rolls out in the next few trading sessions. The Great British Pound versus the US was one of the weaker pairs yesterday, and as you can see here, we are trading a little bit higher on the back of today, and we'll see whether we get some support. But nonetheless, the pound has been one of the weaker pairs, and we will keep an eye on $1.52 for support, and resistance will come in at $1.54.5. The euro was somewhat supported, as you can see here, on the back of Tipras' comments, and we have got ourselves a key reversal day that the trading members will be aware of. And this may present an opportunity for us to take some short-term longer positions as the market tries to get a little bit confident in regards to Tipras and his comments that a deal is becoming near. And if they do hang on to that and we do see some positive data, we could see the US dollar just have a little bit of a rest and the euro have a little bit of a bounce. If that's the case, $1.10 would be resistance. Also noting the triple top here historically at $1.10, $1.10.5, $10.3 is a major resistance level. So it'll be interesting to see what the market does when it tests those levels. US dollar versus the Canadian dollar still charging ahead as oil was a little bit weak. We've seen the US dollar get off to a great start in the Euro session and then stall in the US session. But as you can see, due to the comments coming out of the Bank of Canada, it has had no impact on stalling this pair, and oil continues to be off its higher levels that we've seen recently. US dollar versus the Japanese yen continues to be the stellar performer. I'll zoom in so you can see there. There we go. And it continues to exceed its highs. We now have to really consider, if I zoom out for you, we have to really start to consider here the 15-year highs that the market is testing, and a break above a 124.200 would definitely send a strong signal to the market. You can see that we have touched that level recently, and it has pulled away, but a push above that and a daily close above that would send a strong signal to the market. For now, we may be able to see if the US dollar does come off today, and my instincts are right. We may have found a very short-term top, and we may look for a short-term correction, and we may be able to get an opportunity to buy a US dollar JAP at some lower levels for the longer term, especially if we are, and you are one of those traders that expects an interest rate rise at some point this year that can continue to fuel the US dollar for the time being. Well, that's it from me today. We have a little bit of data coming out, and I wish you all the best in the trading session. Until tomorrow, trade well.